Tuna longline fishing targets the larger species of tuna, that is yellowfin, big eye, and albacore tuna, that live deep in the open ocean. Tuna longlining is a passive fishing technique that involves the use of long main lines and branch lines with baited hooks. The longline vessel Solander 12 departs Suva Harbour on one of its typical fishing trips. The vessel must steam overnight to reach the best fishing ground, one that the captain knows very well. The crew relies on his expertise and experience to find and catch fish. If they catch a lot of tuna and other fish on their trip, means that everyone will get a good reward in terms of wages. Day 1 of fishing, the first set for this trip, early morning. Setting the longline gear involves putting the main line, branch lines and baited hooks into the water. Several hours before this, frozen bait was put out to thaw. Branch lines with baited hooks are attached to the long main line and supported by a series of floats on float lines at regular intervals. Floats with float lines, branch lines with baited hooks, radio beacons and the main line make up the bulk of the longline gear. The main line is laid out using a machine called a line shooter or line setter. The end of the main line is marked with a radio buoy for locating the gear later during the retrieving process. The first radio buoy that is dropped into the sea marks the start of the set. The branch lines are attached to the main line at regular intervals. Using a timer or audio beeper, each hook is baited before being deployed. The float lines with floats are attached to the main line at regular intervals to support and keep the entire longline gear afloat. The number of hooks put into each basket or between floats has already been decided by the captain. This is based on his knowledge and experience of the most likely depth in the water where tuna may be. Hooks that are close to the float lines catch fish at a shallow depth, while hooks at the center of the curve catch fish at greater depths. The depth where the hooks are set in the water column is based on several parameters, such as how many hooks there are between floats, the length of the float line, the length of the branch lines, and the line setting speed. The main line setting speed The vessel's setting speed and other set specifications are also decided beforehand by the captain. These specifications are routinely recorded by the observer like mitieli for each set. A basket contains all the gear between two floats, including branch lines with bait, main line and float line with float. It takes about an average of 5 hours to put out and deploy just over 3,000 hooks. At the end of setting, the long line gear is left to drift for a period of time before the crew start to haul it in. This will allow plenty of time for fish to take the bait. The captain decides when to start hauling in. The hauling operation requires all crew to be on deck. It is a long operation and probably the hardest part of longline fishing. It usually starts around late in the afternoon and continues throughout the night till early the next morning. Main lines are hauled back using a line hauler. The first radio beacon brought on board marks the start of the hauling process. A crewman is in control of the hauling machine. He can either slow down or stop the hauling machine once a large fish is hauled on board. He can also tell ahead of time if a fish is caught on the line by the heavy weight of the main line that goes through the hauler. Branch lines, floats and float lines are dismantled and unclipped from the main line, coiled and stored ready for the next set. The hooks are removed once the fish are landed. The crew process the fish before they are stored and then preserve them in cold seawater. The hauling operation takes at least 8 to 10 hours, depending on the number of hooks put out during setting and how many fish are caught. Sea and weather conditions also play a role in determining the duration of this operation. Target species such as yellowfin, big eye, and albacore are carefully handled and processed for overseas markets. They are first spiked and bled before they are gilled, gutted, and cleaned. Fish are preserved in cold, refrigerated seawater. They will be kept there until the vessel returns to port. And tuna preserved under ice or in refrigerated cold seawater can be stored for only a certain number of days before they must be unloaded and delivered to an overseas market. Two weeks is the maximum time for fish required for the sashimi market. Market demand and flight schedules for delivering the fish to overseas markets also have a bearing on the length of a fishing trip.